Hey, this is Kyle Stowers, and you're listening to Fish on First.
Welcome into Fish on First Live, part of Foul Territory Network. We have Eli Sussman, we have Isaac Azut, Daniel Rodriguez, Nate Karsmer. I'm Jeremiah Geiger. Jam-packed show for you today. I want to start by talking about some real good results on the pitching side of things, guys. Astros and the Marlins, Grapefruit League action. Marlins win 2-0. Sandy Alcantara pitches 3 innings. Robbie Snelling pitches 3 innings. Both looked phenomenal. Nate, take us to the start of that game. Just like, what was your takeaways from those two pitchers in particular?
Yeah, they both looked incredible. Sandy threw he threw a bullpen or just live BP, I believe, on Thursday or Friday of last week or when they were in Clearwater, and they were great results there. And he continued it today. Every pitch was on. I was most interested to see that new sweeper he's been working on. Didn't throw it that much, but still, it looked good. Vintage Sandy, 4 ground balls, 4 Ks, so a little bit of both. If you're talking about the Sandy Alcantara you want to see. And he was giddy after the game. He had a long week flying back to the DR for those 2 exhibition games. Didn't even pitch, but just going there with that insane environment, the workouts down at Lone Depot. And, yes, he's stoked. Obviously, he didn't have the results he wanted to back in 2023, even coming off the Cy Young in the WBC. But he's stoked to get back out there with his guys. And Robbie Snelling, who had a up-and-down start last week in Clearwater as well against the A Phillies lineup, who I noted after that game has been facing nothing but studs. I mean, the A Mets lineup with Soto, Bichette, and Marcus Semien, and then a bunch of Phillies regulars. And then even today, first inning of work was against Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, and Isaac Paredes, who Paredes gave Sandy a 14-pitch at-bat, just, of course. And he sat him down 1-2-3, struck him a left, struck out the side. So Snelling was great. He said even after the Clearwater game that, his pitch shapes were there. He just had to command it, and he commanded great today, trusted his stuff. And definitely a sign of good things to come. And look at the rest of the staff: Lake Bacher, the Demon himself, Tyler Zuber, and Carson Milbrandt, all hitless as well. And Carson, who's I'm very impressed with. He pitched in I think his only 2 appearances I've seen. He pitched against the Blue Jays over in Dunedin, so he's looked great. That little funky windup, really just continuing what he did in the fall league, being a fall star. So encouraging day all around. I think the only negative was that Xavier Edwards got pulled with left calf tightness. But Clayton said he wasn't too worried about it. Should expect him to see back tomorrow. And, yeah, Marlins keep stealing bases. I believe they had 5 more today, already more than they had 30 games in spring training last year. So we talked about the aggressiveness last year when they hired Clayton. I think this time around with the new first base coach, they're really going to start putting it into motion. So overall, a good day. And, one more thing. Kevin DeFrank, that kid is the oldest 17-year-old I have ever seen in my entire life. I talked to Jack McMullen about it. I'm like, yeah, that kid would be a junior in high school throwing 102 with bad lights. Like, how is that? I don't know. I feel like he's a kid that had to have like his birth certificate laminated every place he went when he was younger, especially if he was stateside. So that kid's a monster. I expect things for him in 2026. But yeah, overall great day in Jupiter.
All the Marlins opponents are going to be flipping that around. They're going to be saying that he was forging his birth certificate on the way up because it is so hard. It's amazing. It's really he won the genetic lottery, even though he didn't appear in this game yet. I wanted to draw people's attention to all the way in that right side, the fire emojis. Those are supposed to indicate hard hit balls allowed by pitchers. In this entire game, they allowed 1 hard hit ball. And I mean, that was 1 hit total. But the fact that not even any hard contact whatsoever, with 1 exception, the entire game, that's the kind of stuff that really excites me. That's the kind of stuff that I think even translates more towards actual real baseball than the raw stats itself. But the raw stats themselves today were just eye-popping on both regards. I'll cue it up in just a moment, but I posted the back-to-back-to-back strikeouts that Snelling had against the heart of the Astros order, and the tweet is doing pretty well. And I love it how I'm able to kind of like reverse engineer social media trends based on the notifications. The reason why it's so popular is it's because all these self-hating Padres fans are like kicking themselves over the fact that they made that trade, that they included Snelling as just one of 4 guys for the rental Tanner Scott and for the artist formerly known as Brian Hoeing, who has barely pitched at all like the last year plus, and he's hurt again. And Snelling was just one of 4 guys that the Marlins got in that deal alone. So it's just funny to see all the quote tweets that I can tell are from Padres fans that are really regretting selling low on Snelling because now he's a stud, a guy that is right on the cusp of breaking through to the big leagues.
Isaac, Daniel, any further thoughts on Robbie Snelling's outing today, or?
Well, what Nate said, for him to come back after what was a little bit of a rough start, granted an unfair, just he was facing, like he said, the A team for the Philadelphia Phillies in Clearwater on the west side of Florida. To come back and do this against another pretty much A team in the Houston Astros is really encouraging. Coming out after Sandy and to follow up his great performance with one of his own was very encouraging. I think you got to assume he's maybe got 2 more Grapefruit League appearances before the round of cuts that get him. Unfortunately, I did hold out outside hope that maybe he would make the opening day rotation, but just the way Paddock has looked so far, Max Meyer in limited opportunities as well, and Brack starting to pitch a little bit better, including his start against Israel, it looks like the rotation is pretty much set, and they're not going to really fool around with him in any other role other than the starting rotation. So I would guess he's got maybe 2 more appearances up here before he gets, I guess it would be reassigned to minor league camp, not option to Jacksonville. So, yeah, just if you're able to go watch him pitch, I would, because he won't be down there much longer, and he's going to be a fixture of that Miami rotation up in Little Havana for the foreseeable future.
I think we should use this opportunity just to pull up Kevin's recent opening day roster projection here that he put out yesterday, because as expected, Snelling not on there right now. He's not on the 40-man. And we've discussed this previously, how it seems like they have 5 older, more experienced guys that are penciled into those spots, health permitting, and all things. They've been pretty lucky on the health front when it comes to these rotation candidates so far. But let's use your imagination here, Jeremiah. If there is one of those starters that doesn't get hurt, which one of them somehow you think might be most vulnerable to get leapfrogged by Snelling over these last few weeks if Snelling just makes it so abundantly clear that he's ready?
It's tough. It's tough, like, looking at this projection, because obviously Sandy and Uri are locks. Paddock is a lock because they're giving him $4 million to pitch. It comes down to Meyer and Garrett, and I lean toward Meyer being the guy who, although the organization wants him to start, I think given his production history, Snelling, if he has an excellent spring, and he really has to wow the front office, he could theoretically jump Meyer. I think realistically what you're looking at, though, is over the next month or so to start the regular season, if Meyer shows inconsistencies, that's when Snelling is going to make his move and eventually jump Meyer in the rotation. I think it's a hot take, not a hot take, but one of my predictions is that Max Meyer's out of the rotation by Memorial Day. Snelling takes his place, barring no injuries, assuming everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I believe, even though I completely agree that Max Meyer should have been probably tried out in the bullpen last year, they're going to give him every opportunity to do so in the rotation again this year. I think Brax really is going to have to. It's that before he even got hurt, when he had that excellent 2023 season, he was really never going to be allowed to face a lineup a third time through. Sometimes they were scared to let him face a lineup a second time through. It was encouraging to see the stuff that I saw against Team Israel. But I think there's just so little margin for error with Brax as a starter that I think eventually they're gonna replace him with Snelling. That would be my bold prediction.
It's also just tough because you forget that Max Meyer, gets Tommy John after his second MLB start, and then he finally comes up in 24, gets sent down after that whole conundrum when he was pitching great and they sent him down. Then last year he has that 13-14 strikeout damage in Cincinnati and then gets rocked by the Rockies. And then that was about it. He was hurt for pretty much the rest of the year. So as much as I am not the biggest believer in him starting for this team long term, I still believe you'd give him maybe a month or two just to at least, healthy, show you what he's got, maybe see if that changeup has come. even farther. But even then, he's only had one start this spring before tomorrow. So it's tough. I feel like you can't take Bratson out right now. It is realistic that I think we just see Robbie in Jacksonville and then let Max and Bratz battle out for that last spot before Robbie inevitably tears up AAA once again and comes up. But I feel like when we talk about Max Meyer, we don't really acknowledge that he kind of has had the short end of the stick pretty much his entire career, unfortunately.
Yeah, well,
He is short, all right, relative to other major league starters.
That is true. That is true.
So that's part of it. Not
don't see
all
a
those
way
injuries, but
if Paddock completely shits the bed, they just put up Robbie Snelling, because I don't know. I feel like we've seen them before eat contracts if they don't want to keep players who are just completely shitting the bed and give them no hope in terms of winning ball games.
Yeah, you're looking at multiple months to get to that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it with Tim Anderson. It took a full half of a season. It took 3 months for them to do it with TA, and that was a super extreme example of just being unplayable. With the they were patient with Quantrill, and it looks like for a moment that patience was going to be rewarded when he turned things around like a month and a half into the season, and then we know how that played out, where ultimately not much to show for that signing whatsoever. Now, the fact is that at least his previous spring outing from Paddock was encouraging in terms of checked a lot of boxes that you like to see, where I think it's going to be relatively long leash with him. So, yeah, it's the thing. But with both Max and Braxton, just want to remind people that they both have minor league options remaining. So it's, even if they're much more experienced, it's they do have the flexibility to send them down, which is not true for a lot of other teams that have rotation decisions like this. They do have that flexibility with everybody, well, except for Paddock and Sandy. But for both Max and Braxton, it wouldn't be totally out of line for other organizations maybe to send them down. But in this case, I think the boring answer is that the older guys that don't have anything left to develop, even if you don't feel they're as good, you give them some sort of runway to actually perform, knowing that inevitably there's going to be some injuries along the way.
Yeah.
Well, I also feel like with Meyer, if the organization feels like they want to use an option on him, at that point, you kind of know what you have. If he's pitched poorly enough where you're saying, all right, let's option him to AAA and reset, just stop the experiment already, and that kind of solves itself. With Paddock, I honestly don't see a scenario where Paddock isn't on the team throughout at least the first half of the season. Maybe they move him at the deadline. He'd have to pitch horrendous because they're investing money in him. And I mean, this Marlins front office, the ownership, they don't spend a ton. So when they do spend money, they want to try to get as much out of it as possible. I mean, look at Quantrill from a year ago. I know we were saying for months Quantrill shouldn't be in the rotation, and they did that weird like 2-3 innings start, and then someone else would come in. So I don't know.
That's what I'd like to see them do with Max. I mean, yeah, Nate did correctly acknowledge that it's been a little bit of unluckiness with him, but dude, even before he was hurt last year, he got off to a little bit of a hot start, including that 14 strikeout performance against the Reds. And then he just goes back to allowing 5 runs against Seattle, 10 hits against the Athletics, 5 runs against the White Sox. It's just continuously mid, because the only pitch he throws 60% of the time is his only okay pitch. And you've got a really bad fastball, and you've got a changeup that is yet to develop. And when you've got those factors, it just makes perfect sense to either have him be in that, not a long relief role, because that implies you're in dog shit games, but more so that Andrew Miller type of role where you pitch in the 7th, 8th, and it's just shorten the game that way. Maybe combine him and Brax, combine him and whoever. And I think you lengthen your bullpen that way, and you shorten the game, and you will also just give yourself a better chance to win all around. But we'll see. I think this is it, though. This is the last year for this experiment to continue. It is a number 3 overall pick in the 2020 draft. You got to give him every single chance. And like you said, he was screwed a little bit, but come on, man.
Number 3 pick 6 years ago out of college. I mean, that's quite a runway.
It's enough.
I mean, they could have picked Asa Lacy, so things would always be worse. Let's not forget.
I thought they should have picked Asa Lacy. That shows you
At least Max made the majors.
Yeah, I thought they should have picked Asa Lacy at the time. I was like,
I was losing it, but what do we know?
Yeah. While we still have Nate on here, I wanted just to follow up a little bit on X and the fact that a hamstring what was calf tightness? Calf tightness. So I saw the quote, and it's in the article on fishnonfirst.com if you haven't read it. Clayton downplayed it quite a bit, but you were there, you were looking into his eyes. Are you convinced that it was just nothing? Because I'm not a doctor, but I'm very well versed in baseball injury issues, and I know that if calf tightness goes into even the most minor strain, especially for a guy like him, like it would not shock me if we find out that that's an injury that might actually be an IL stint if it turns into anything more.
Yeah, it's odd. I heard tightness, but then Clayton said posting that it was a cramp. So
Okay.
differing reports, I'm not sure. But when we were talking to Sandy, Etz walked in, didn't look, too pissed or anything, just put his bats away and walked to his locker. But I didn't even see I think it might have only happened when he was sliding into second for his stolen base. I didn't see anything because we were talking to Sandy again. So when the injury actually happened, when he was pulled, I didn't see a reaction on the field or anything. When he stole second, he was fine. But just looking at him, it didn't look like he was extra angry or anything. But Clayton's saying that it was a cramp also. It makes me feel a little better because losing a guy like that, especially for me, leader of that fan club around here, that would be brutal. But yeah, if he's not in the lineup tomorrow, I'd be a little bit more worried. My radar would be going off a little bit. But for now, I think we're going to trust the guy and I guess just trust that's his body language at this point.
As you alluded to, though, this is the part of spring where finally we'll see guys on back-to-back days. That has not happened at all to this point in terms of guys starting consecutive days without rest in between. And so that is when, to me, spring training gets slightly more watchable, is when you actually see that part of the process. But I'll just throwing it out there that going through the years, there's guys never are diagnosed with, they always downplayed initially. It's always tightness. It was the same. One vivid example is Kyle Stowers last year. He leaves the game with oblique tightness, and then the next day it's an oblique strain, and then he ends up missing a quarter of the season, the final quarter of the season. It's kind of the same way with a lot of all these soft tissue examples. So when it goes from tightness to a strain, especially this close to the start of the season, that's just something I'm watching. So fingers crossed that we get good news. But otherwise, that's a big wrinkle. I just think of it when I look at this roster projection in terms of, what do they do if they miss X for a significant amount of time, or any amount of time? Probably slide Javier Snoja to second base on a regular basis, but then you kind of miss out on having a super utility guy because they don't really have another candidate for that particular role per se. It'll be an interesting ripple effect, even if it turns into anything at all. So we'll see.
Probably did a lot faster if Ruiz ends up making the roster at that point. I guess you can do the money ball, replace Etz's speed with Ruiz until he gets back. But like you said, knock on wood. I'm happy that Clayton pointed out that he would do a back-to-back tomorrow. Maybe he's getting our hopes up, but the fact that he mentioned that makes me feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else from this particular game? We glossed over Sandy a little bit. Sandy hit 99 with his fastball, which is more indicative of what he's used to. And you mentioned it, he had this 14-pitch battle in the first inning. And I was listening on the radio, and I was listening to Craig Mish say the plan was to go 3 ups today, but if you use this many pitches right now, is he going to be able to do that? And then it turns out that he does those 3 innings even comfortably below whatever soft pitch limit they had for him. And so it was just extremely impressive against an Astros team that historically does not like to play their big guys during the course of spring games. They keep it as minimal as possible. So the fact that he actually got to face a good chunk of their legit lineup over the course and actually had the stuff to back it up and the results to back it up was highly encouraging. We know that the translation in terms of the regular season to spring training in Sandy's case did not mean much of anything last year because he was awesome in spring last year and it didn't carry over directly. So now the WBC is a fascinating wrinkle. Based on Clayton's previous comments, they're going to let him go about 65 pitches if needed in the WBC next week. And I think that'll be a maximum of 4 innings if things go really smoothly. So I talked about that a little bit more on my pod yesterday with him, where he'll make it at least 1 start. And then I think they'd have to go all the way to the championship for him to make a second WBC start as well. So, but we'll be monitoring that for sure.
Kevin and I spoke about it with Clayton off the record while he was walking back towards the backfields. One, I asked him, if it were up to you, is there any better time of year to have this freaking tournament? And he goes, yeah, he acknowledged that this is just not ideal for obvious reasons. And then regarding Sandy, if he does have to make a second start, they don't know if they'd sign off on that quite yet, because for obvious reasons, right before opening day, they're going to let, if it comes to that, they'll have to make a decision, but it's going to be very interesting to see it, because for obvious, all over the league, you see Tarek Skubal's only going to make one start. Paul Skeens, however, will make a couple starts, including his game against Mexico in pool play, and then he will start in the semifinals. With Sandy, it would line up to be in the championship game, because you'll start on the 11th against Venezuela, and then it would be the championship game on the 17th against who knows who. So that would be 10 days before opening day. So, it's a lot of risk on this in this tournament for sure.
Good. Well, let's resume this conversation in just 1 minute. But first, have to shout out our loyal, lovely sponsors at Jet Ski Rentals of South Florida. They present all of our podcasts, offering Miami's best jet ski and boat adventures. With 6 jet ski locations and over 120 boats, there's something for every style and every budget. Ride jet skis right in front of the downtown skyline and Ferris wheel, or book your own private boat starting at as low as $300 with the captain included. Bring your drinks, your friends, and enjoy the water your way. The boat is completely yours and the time you reserve it. They're reservation-based only. To book, call 305-990-2192 or check them out online at sfjetskirentals.com. We have our own promo code, Fish on First, all one word, Fish on First. You get a 10% savings off your next booking. Again, that's 305-990-2192 or online at sfjetskirentals.com. Back in action. Question from the live chat. Oh, Ashley. I think she's a super sub of ours and a very loyal supporter. So what's she have in mind? Which Marlins prospect do you think will have the biggest impact in the next 2 to 3 years? All right. It's
a great question. I don't know where she came up with it. I'm a little concerned that she knew to ask that, but I'll deal with that later. I'm going to say, I think there's 2. I'll give her, I'm sure she's at the edge of her seat for this, but I think there's 2 answers here. And I think one of them is going to be the guy in the starting rotation for the next 5 to 6 years, and Robbie Snelling, who pitched today. I would have said Thomas White. I think he's obviously going to be a little bit behind Snelling now with the injury. And I still think that Thomas has a little bit more to work on before he's able to be at that elite level, at the highest level. And then on the offensive side, you're going to see the biggest impact in the world when the Marlins have Joe Mack behind the plate. From 1, the pitching staff, 2, the defense behind the plate, the framing, even though the framing is going to be a little bit less significant going forward. And then just having that power. I know Miami had Agustin Ramirez last year, but still just have that left-handed power bat. Also be your elite defensive catcher, calling games not calling games, but, handling your pitching staff is going to make a huge difference for this organization going forward. For those who weren't there, it was against the Astros. He had a hell of a pickoff throw at first base, just the athleticism that this young man has. He's still very young. Remember, a high school draft pick. He might be one of the few high school catching draft picks that actually becomes a success story. We're hoping that becomes the case. But yes, Joe Mack and Robbie Snelling in the next 2 to 3 years, you can count on them to have a big impact, Miss Ashley.
Yeah, I'd go the same direction. I'm trying to think of a sleeper. I guess a sleeper pick in this regard would be Kemp Alderman, just because of the upside with his bat. We've seen a bit of him this spring. We're expecting to see quite a bit of him over the course of the season, although there's not the timing of it is going to be very interesting because there's not like a glaring opening in the outfield. It's just a question of when, through a combination of underperformance or injury, does more playing time open, and what does he do with it? He took such a big step forward last year in terms of just his hitting ability. Like, that was a big question mark. The raw power has always been true top of the scale stuff. And his base running even improved a bit last year, just in terms of the way he trimmed down his body overall. That may make him a more viable corner outfielder as well. I'm not really that impressed with his defense, but I think that's going to be his primary position moving forward. And he certainly has the arm out there. So I want to go with a somewhat of an unorthodox one, but I think Kemp's upside is about as good as anybody's if everything clicks.
I was gonna say Casey because I feel like he's just gonna,
Yeah,
because I feel like that was the most obvious one. I had to think for a second. Yeah, it's still a prospect. He's still going to command that outfield position for the Marlins for the next, hopefully, 10 years or so. And maybe going against what Eli says, I know Eli thinks that he might stay in the minors to start the season, but for me, and I think for the majority of us, think he will come up and start in the Marlins lineup on the opening day roster. And that's a guy the Marlins hopefully, big trade with the Cubs that with Casey is going to stay in the Marlins outfield for the foreseeable future. And I think he's going to have such a big impact as well for the Marlins because I don't think he has anything left to prove in the minors at all. And I think he's going to have the biggest impact offensively. And I think also outfield defense as well. It's going to be much improved for Casey now coming up with the Marlins.
Yeah, I know he hasn't made his debut yet, but just a second, the idea of Joe Mack being an absolute stud for this franchise, there's a realistic possibility that in 5 years, I mean, the question is 2 to 3 years, we're looking at Joe Mack as a top 5 catcher in baseball. That's how good he is defensively. And he's going to shift the narrative away from other teams just being able to run all the time on Miami. It felt like whenever a Marlins pitcher walked someone, it was going to be a double because they would steal second. If anyone had an ounce of speed, they were going to take off because they know that especially when Agustin Ramirez is back there, he can't throw anybody out. And the pitchers didn't do an adequate job at holding runners. So when Mac's back there, that's going to be taken care of. The big X factor for me, if he can really reach that upper echelon of elite catchers, because I know the power's there and the defense is there, it's just a hit tool for me. How is he going to adjust to major league pitching? I know there's a little bit of concern with the whiff rate, swing and miss with Mac. And even if it doesn't reach like an elite rate, you're not calling him up for his hit tool. You just want the power and you want the defense. With Alderman, though, Eli, I wanted to mention this because I love Alderman. I think he's one of my favorite prospects, especially last year, that breakout season. I think his profile is exactly what Miami is looking for. Hits the ball extremely hard, has decent athleticism, can steal bases. Was a 2020 guy last year. But where will he fit in the long-term plans? That's what I'm wondering, because in an ideal world, for the next few years, you're going to have Jacob Marcy, Owen Casey, and Kyle Stowers manning the outfield. Where does Alderman even slot in?
I have a pretty bold idea that I'd say more so than those guys. I think his status is more closely tied to Augustine and whether or not he's really part of the Marlins' future. They have been in terms of their overall offensive profile, there's quite a bit in common between the two. The thing is, they were hopeful that Augustine was going to be a catcher, and this year is going to be pretty critical towards determining whether he can even do that decently at a part-time capacity. So that's kind of where I look, where these guys are. There's a lot in common, except Kemp has a real position, and even if he's not good at that position, he has it. And there's going to be enough playing time in the outfield, regardless, just because of the handedness situation.
Yeah.
This Marlins team there's very few guys that are going to be totally unleashed as everyday players hitting in every single situation throughout the game. Like even Stowers, if he's starting almost every, he's kind of a different case where there are days with him where they even showed last year not fully comfortable having him hit against lefties. So they're going to find ways to there's going to be at-bats available for a right-handed hitting outfielder one way or the other. But the thing is with Kemp, if his defense doesn't prove to be great, like he's a guy that for the same reason why Augustine, he's got so much playing time at DH last year and projects to be a lot of DH time at the start of this year. Like him and Kemp, to me, there's just a lot in common. There's not a clear divide there. Augustine got here first, and initially he took such full advantage of that opportunity and then really faded as the year goes on. So to me, that's what I'm watching. I think that could go in a lot of different directions by the end of this year. Maybe he takes that improbable step forward defensively and hits more consistently throughout the whole year, and then there's that really low floor on the other end where if he still makes no progress as a catcher and he continues to be just making really questionable swing decisions as well, and he's not getting on base, then all of a sudden you might be going into 2027 and feeling like that spot is wide open. So that's something that I'm watching, and I've been really optimistic about. I think even during the course of the second half of the season, I've been very hopeful about Ramirez as a hitter. I really do think he's going to move forward in that regard. I just got to acknowledge the wide variety of possible outcomes that there still is with somebody like him. And even Sean Miller threw out, I think this is related to the same question, Josh White being kind of a bold prediction there, where I love Josh White as a pitcher too. The impact that a guy can make as a relief only option is only so much, but I think he's going to be great. He's a guy that I have a lot of confidence in transitioning. Yeah, we're going to save the spring breakout stuff till the end, but I think just for the sake of organization, we might as well throw that up right now just to go through it. The 40-man player pool for spring breakout, which is still 2 full weeks away. Like initially, I was really pleased to see that they were going to be drawing attention to this so early. But then when you actually go through it and you realize, well, they didn't actually make any decisions at all yet. I mean, this is a 40-man player pool for a single exhibition game. They're only going to end up using about 20. The limit is going to be 23 to 27 for the game itself. They haven't really made many decisions at all when it comes to this, but it's essentially just an overview of Pipeline's Marlins top 30 list. And there's some rules and regulations here, but I guess, among the guys that are not the ones that don't have a number next to them, Daniel, for all the guys that are, any names that surprise you, any names that there are names here that even I don't know very much about. Who kind of like catches your eye in terms of players you weren't thinking of initially when this whole, in terms of being spring breakout candidates?
I honestly couldn't tell you who Ethan O'Donnell is.
Oh no, him, yeah.
Carter Johnson, I think is pretty nice to see there. I know Carver's very iffy on him, but to see him there amongst the infielders does give me a little bit of hope for him. Hopefully to see something in the spring breakout game. But I think for me, that'll be one of my guys, maybe with the guys with the NR to really look at, especially in the high draft pick they used for Carter Johnson. I think that's something to really look at.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I pride myself in knowing most of the people in this organization. I had to look up who Caden Wilson was. It turns out he was a 9th round pick of last year's draft. I don't know what this has been. This 40-man roster announcement, I don't understand it too much. It's not as sexy as it was a few years ago, where everyone there was a notable name, and we're just putting guys who have half a season of professional ball after being drafted in the 9th round last year. Then you might as well put all 120 guys in the organization in this freaking graphic, because, geez, what are we doing here? How many pitchers is that? Is that 15 pitchers? 14 pitchers, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's a 40-man roster, but he was one of them. And the other guys that I had to check up on, no, I know Colby Martin. No, he's the only one who I had to look up, which is pretty good. But
Thomas White here, you don't think he's probably not gonna pitch in this?
No, he's not
gonna pitch.
That's the thing. They're kind of lazy with this, where they wanted. They insist on listing all the top 30 guys, even the ones that both him and Iva's in the same situation. Yeah. He just hurt his whatever it was. His what was it? His injury? I'll look it up. He'll miss the start of the regular season with that procedure that he underwent. So with him, he'll be out. And I'll bring up the actual stipulations, the roster details here.
Oh, no.
To accommodate player movement involved with the WBC, give farm directors greater flexibility. They're being constructed in 2 phases in 2026. Now they tell us it's 2 phases. So yeah, they included all the top 30 guys, and then they included injured players. They're gonna end up removing the injured ones, and players on the 40-man roster who have elected not to participate, which just means guys that are competing for major league jobs, guys that are still in contention or for whatever reason that draw out. Yeah, so Casey is the obvious one, where they don't really have guys in the spring breakout game historically if they're going to be imminent big leaguers. So if he is, by the end of camp, expected to break camp with a big league team, I don't think he'd be playing in this. Just some other examples that fall into that category. Joe Mack is unlikely to make the opening day roster, but that's another one that
you never know.
Yeah, he might. We'll see if he's in that situation. The other 40-man roster guys on here are Davison, De Los Santos. I kind of giggled that they listed Davison as a third baseman only. Now, he did play quite a bit of third base last year in Jacksonville, and it did not go well. The Marlins have been pretty clear that his future is at first base. So I don't really understand the rationale. That seems to just be a mistake to only list him as a third baseman and not anything else. Some other just notable names I want to highlight. Johanfer Santana is the one that really popped from a stuff perspective in the DR 2 years ago in 2024, but he blew out his elbow almost immediately after starting that 2024 season, underwent Tommy John, missed all last year. So he's the one where DeFrank gets more of the attention because of his reputation he had coming directly out of being an international signing, the way that he performed last year, and the strength that he has relative to his age. Santana is even taller. Santana is 6'7", if I saw that correctly. And he was throwing just as hard before his injury. So that is just one to monitor, where he's been out of, he never really had much time to get into the public view. In fact, the reason why most Marlins fans, if any, have heard of Santana is because Fangraphs really boldly, I remember Eric Longenhagen of Fangraphs, he ranked him like number 5 overall prospect in this Marlins system. Somebody that nobody had ever heard of immediately jumped all the way up near the top of the Fangraphs list, and then he got hurt shortly after that. But that is kind of one of his only claims to fame right now to this point, is that Fangraphs was high on him for just a brief moment in time back then. As Isaac mentioned, Caden Wilson is a new draft pick, as is Xavier Cardenas, who was the one that was just drafted last year. And that was I love the draft picks that are just awful in college. Like he was awful. Like I don't even have to look up the numbers to know that Cardenas had an ERA north of 8 during his final college season, and he was playing in a relatively small school as well. And yet that Marlins and a lot of teams at this point, they don't really measure. They don't take that. That's not a big factor when it comes to actual prospect evaluation, because you're just looking at what can I change about this player? How when they bring them into our organization with our technology and our principles, how much can we change them? And with Cardenas, it was a complete investment in his stuff and his raw ability. So the fact that he's even listed here, I think, speaks to him having made some good progress over the course of this offseason, heading into Wolby's first full year. So,
I think also you can make the case, not in the same sense of being such a highly ranked prospect, but in the same sense of maybe not doing so much in college or in other leagues. You look at a guy like Jake Faraday. He had 15 innings pitched in college over 3 seasons. And the Marlins taking a chance on him, and for him to be even selected in this in the 40-man pool really says something there. I know you look at his ERA and everything in the minors, not so great. I believe it's around 6, but a guy who had 15 innings in college to now being part of spring breakout preliminary pool roster, I think it says a lot about the Marlins pitching development.
Yeah, you weren't lying about Xavier Cardenas. 26 games pitched for San Diego State in 2025. He had a 9.24 earned run average while allowing 63 hits in just 50 innings pitched. So he did have 8 innings of professional ball last year. Only gave up 2 earned runs, but yeah, this is different. Not to make this a staff meeting, but I think I'm going to just write up what I think the 23 to 27 man roster should be when they announce it finally on March 18th, because what the heck are we supposed to do with this? This is just baloney.
Yeah. Dylan Head and PJ 26-27 is crazy. Like, I feel like Dylan, why do they have Dylan Head there? That's a disgusting.
Well, that's how Pipeline operates. Yeah. Head missed obviously a lot of time. I haven't been able to see him firsthand, so we don't know what exactly that hip surgery has done to maybe a speed or whatever. But him being 26 is egregious, and right in front of PJ Morlando makes it just adds insult to injury. I think that's preposterous, and they just love ranking draft picks ridiculously high, particularly college draft picks. Still, no matter what round you were selected, you're going to be ranked on MLB Pipeline's draft board, which is just, injuries. I don't hate Brandon Compton, for example, but, for him to be ranked where he is just, it's interesting to me the way this is done. But anyway.
I wanted to reply to that previous comment that just showed up on the screen about Jake Faraday. not being able to control the strike zone. And I think that's fascinating because there's a couple of guys on this list, in particular, Jake Faraday and Colby Martin, who got some action in, I think it was the second or third spring training game, and I really liked his stuff. It was the one where the Cardinals actually walked off the Marlins on that wild pitch. Not that Grapefruit League results matter, but I like Faraday's stuff, and I like Colby Martin's stuff a lot. This is going to be a huge season for a lot of these guys, but those two in particular, because they're bullpen exclusive arms, to really take a step forward in terms of command. Colby Martin, I think, is 24 years old. I know Jake Faraday was in college. He might be a year or two younger.
He's 22.
But 22. Okay, so a big season ahead of them, and in order just to establish themselves on the radar of the front office. And going back to the position side, outfielders who isn't ranked, Matthew Etzel. I like what Matthew Etzel has done. I like his profile. He feels like a relatively safe floor, fourth outfielder type player. You know, a lot of speed, hits the ball hard, and he's got a great nickname, James Harden, the Beard. I made that up.
I guess it's a young Harden sort of beard, where it was not crazy long, but in terms of the thickness and the actual texture of it, it is a pretty close match to it. I have been keeping track of the exit velo leaders for the Marlins this spring, and you kind of alluded to it, where he's had several of the very hardest hit balls of any Marlins player so far. For a guy that might be able to fake it in center field, that's exciting. That was the Nick Fortes trade that they were able to acquire him for, the one where Fortes had value after all. And that could be kind of interesting. We've talked already on the show about like several other outfielders that, like, I don't know, there's not like an obvious opening for him, with him especially being another left-handed hitting outfielder. So if we think that the imminent fit for a Kemp Alderman is going to be kind of tricky, it's even trickier for Etzel, except for going back to the center field thing. You know, if they actually feel that he is a decent center fielder, then the path is a lot clearer. Then it could be just a matter of it might not be that long into the season before he's the backup on this roster behind Marcy. Or if Marcy gets hurt, God forbid, then that really opens up a big question mark. So that's when he might come in and factor into that situation. But yeah, so they are playing Astros prospects in this showcase a couple weeks from now. And it's just, sort of related topic. We got this comment a lot early about Christopher Morel that I wanted to address. Yes, he is a 222 lifetime hitter, and he is getting a lot of, I've been surprised like how lopsided the first base reps have been so far, where it is a lot of Morel. We've only seen Conine there once so far. We've not seen Heriberto Hernandez there, even though they tried to work him out there at first base pregame last year and never actually got it onto the field. Haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen Graham Pauley there, and Graham Pauley hasn't been anywhere yet because of his minor forearm soreness issue that he's coming back from. So they, like, all indications are you're going to see a lot of Morel, and especially a lot of Morel at first base early on for this upcoming season. So it kind of like goes into line with what I mentioned with Etzel, that he is hitting the ball hard and hitting it consistently hard in spring games, even though if it's not leading to any notable results to this point. Like, that's why they got him most of all, is because they think that the power in there is still plus power, and it's just about unlocking that. If they could put him at wherever they would need to put him on the diamond in order to get him at bats, then they think it's going to be worth it. So if he hits 222, it could still be a successful year. He also hits 25 bombs to go along with it. But I am going to be curious to see how they split up the first base reps moving forward, because it was Hicks before he went to the WBC that at least got one start there. And that's I'm still a little fuzzy in terms of how it's going to play out once the regular season begins, but they're kind of sending a pretty strong message that it's going to be a lot of Morel at first base or early in the season. And the results in its tiny sample, they've been kind of mixed defensively, where I remember the very first inning of the very first spring game, he made this awesome play. And then since then,
I was sold. I was sold. That was
there've been some questions about is actually scooping balls in the dirt and positioning and stuff like that. So he'll still have time to let that play out. But yeah, and they're rolling with him. And at least for the early, we always talk about Paddock and how long the leash is going to be with him. I think Morel's kind of in the same category. It was similar money, a slightly smaller contract for Morel, but where yeah, it's going to be a relatively long leash just because they believe in the power potential that he has. And unless they get a lot of power from some unexpected places elsewhere in the lineup, they're going to try to make that work and be patient with it. I guess we could finish off with
there's a few guys in this lineup that have the power to not hit 45 bombs, 50 bombs, but I think there's some consistent power in this lineup. Morel could hit 20 bombs. I think Stowers, obviously, Augustine, and then Owen Casey, if he gets enough playing time. Also, look out for Heriberto Hernandez. Really like what he's doing. I think he's going to take a huge step forward this season. It just, for me, again, it comes down to, is he going to get consistent playing time? I think he will. Being a right-handed power bat, they're going to want that in some capacity. So the lineup, actually, it's starting to excite me. When I see it on paper, I'm looking at Kevin's projection here. It's not half bad. I like it.
Let's wrap up with some WBC talk then,
Ooh.
because I know that Daniel's really into that, and we have a sponsorship with Fox One that is going over the next couple weeks that we want to tell people about. So Jeremiah, fill them in terms of what is available with Fox One.
All of our World Baseball Classic coverage is brought to you by our friends at Fox One. Stream all your Fox favorites together live in one place, including all WBC games over the next few weeks. And after that, the best MLB action all season long, from the WBC through the World Series to the World Cup, which is this year, to NASCAR and IndyCar. With Fox One, you get it all live. Start your 7-day free trial today. Offers are subject to change. Download Fox One today and stream the World Baseball Classic live March 6th through the 14th. Go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One, streaming now.
Lovely.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for the Classic.
It is. Yeah, so we had Kevin there today, Isaac there as well for the workout day for Pool D. For anybody that's unfamiliar, Pool D of the Classic is going to be based in Lone Depot Park as it was last time. That's the DR, Venezuela, Israel, Nicaragua. Oh, off the top of my head, I got to get the fifth one.
Netherlands?
Netherlands. Thank you. So, yeah, let me throw this up so that
That's a team profile right there. It's Netherlands.
Yeah. So the games are already underway all the way across the other side of the world in the Pool C in Tokyo. And then the other games get started just a matter of hours from now, coming up, where there's going to be double headers on most days in most of these pools. And I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the U.S. and just seeing how dominant this team can be, because they made it all the way to the championship last time, and not in the most authoritative fashion, and then ultimately didn't get over the hump and get it done. So now expectations are going to be heightened even more there. But yeah, with Pool D, we got to wait all the way till the end of Pool D to see Sandy pitch, and I'll be curious to see how they use Gus over the course of that, because he's the clear, the one white guy on the DR team is Austin Wells, that I think is kind of ahead of him on the catching depth chart. They might just be saving Gus for when Sandy pitches in his particular game. Why don't we hear from you, Daniel, in terms of, are there any games in Pool D that you're going to try to make it out to, or which one, even if not, which ones are you most intrigued to watch live?
I want to see how I want to see United States does against that Italy team. I think Italy is one of the most underrated teams in the tournament. Marlon Jacob Marcy will command center field. I think he could have a really dominant tournament and really lead up to opening day. They're a really great team. They have guys like Michael Lorenzen. Their ace will be Aaron Nola. Former Marlin Kyle Nicholas is also on that staff. Adam Ottavino, just looking here. Kyle Teal, top prospect. And former Marlin John Birdie. Then you have Vinny Pasquantino. That's a really underrated team. A lot of major league talent, a lot of major league players, a lot of guys who are top prospects. Italy, don't be surprised if Italy comes out as second place team in Pool B and advances. That's a team can really do some damage. In terms of Pool D, I think everyone has their eyes on Venezuela against the Dominican Republic. All of Miami will be out there for that game. I know a few years ago it was also Venezuela against the Dominican Republic, and that was just so many people there. It was just insane to just go around that area, just the amount of people, and it just delivered one of the best games of the tournament. You're having two top teams there. And maybe another team there that's underrated, I would go with the Netherlands. I think Netherlands have really great pedigree in terms of their top players. You have the Profar brothers. You have Xander Bogaerts. You have a lot of players as there. You have Eli knows well, Didi Gregorius. The Netherlands will be the sneaky team. I don't think Netherlands, Israel, Nicaragua will make it out. I think there's 1% chance at most that any of those teams make it out. But if one of them has to sneak a couple wins, I would go up the Netherlands. But for Pool B, like I mentioned, I think the sleeper team maybe of the whole tournament will be Italy.
There's something you mentioned there where I was with my dad a couple nights ago. I went over to his place and he had a question about the WBC because he saw the name Gregorius with the Netherlands. And Didi had the best stretch of his major league career with the Yankees. My dad is a diehard Yankees fan. He was in disbelief that he was still playing, that he was still an active player. He assumed that it was some younger relative that was still around. And Gregorius is not actually as old as I thought he was. He's just 36, but he declined pretty precipitously after he left the Yankees. So that's an interesting surprise too, when you get older guys that you assumed had retired, but they come back. I mean, the most obvious example in the U.S. is Clayton Kershaw still being involved with this staff, even though he formally retired from Major League Baseball. This is going to be his real retirement as a player. That's a more prominent example. If you really comb through these rosters, though, you see some other guys that that are well past their glory days, but still being involved in this tournament.
You see that a lot. Yeah. In terms of maybe players you do want to see, speaking of the Netherlands, you have Drew Jones, Cindy Rafaela. Ozzy Albies will play there in Netherlands. You'll get to see him against his teammate Ronald Acuna, so that could be very interesting. Yeah, I think you can go around. I look at a team like Czech Republic. They have day jobs like all of us. That's a team where they did beat Korea, I believe, last WBC, or they beat some team very underrated. Australia, very underrated. We saw them beat Chinese Taipei with Travis Pizzana. Pool A, I think, is probably maybe the most complete pool in terms of all 5 teams. That can go any way. I think you could put it, you could pick out of the hat and you have no idea who's going to come out. I think Puerto Rico has been very hurt with insurance policies and a lot of players getting injured. I think Puerto Rico is not as great as they used to be, but they still have the talent to come out of that pool. Cuba, I believe, if they were able to get all the Cuban players, they would easily be one of the best teams in this tournament. But they have guys who are 40 plus years old on that team who have last played in the majors, maybe in the early 2000s. Panama, another good one. And Canada also has Marlon Otto Lopez, who looks like I think will be very sneaky in this tournament.
Speaking of Panama, and to Eli's point about Didi Gregorius, I just saw the other day Ruben Tejada is playing for Team Panama, former Met, and I was like, I hadn't heard that name in years.
It is so much fun.
Tejada is
the roster.
Yeah, it's a good time. I'm excited for this tournament. I really think it's going to come down to the United States on one half of the bracket, and then who's gonna come out of that other side between Japan and the Dominican Republic, because I do think the Dominican Republic can absolutely beat Japan, but Japan's the reigning champs. They're a very good team, so I'm excited for it. A lot of quality players, like Daniel, you were mentioning. Just on Team Italy, there was a lot of names that stood out to me there. I think they're going to compete. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. If you have the chance to go out, go watch it. First game tomorrow with Netherlands against Venezuela. I saw tickets going as low as $15. Go out there, watch Jerks and Profar because you're not going to get the chance to go do that for another 162 games. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Venezuela has a really great lineup. Luis Arias, Ronald Acuna. Yeah, the list will go on and on in terms of Venezuela. But go ahead, watch those games. It's a lot of fun. Isaac will be there. Kevin will be there. Go say hi if you see them. It's always a fun time to to go watch those games.
I want to give people a peek at the next couple of days TV schedule. We have this guide on the website specifically for the WBC, and I made this table that kind of gives you an idea about what the next couple of days looks like. So that's the first 2 games. As we're recording this, the third game of the tournament is starting in a couple hours. Something you mentioned, Daniel, I wish I could find the table, but I saw that somebody put together all 20 teams and sorted them by the salaries of their combined players, the major league salaries even just the professional salaries of every player like on their rosters. So when you combine all the salaries on the US team, it's close to 400 million between just a 30-man roster. On average, those guys are getting like $13 million salaries this year. And all the way at the bottom was
here it is. I got it. Here it is. I don't know if you can see it's on Hard Rock Bet. You have Czechia. The total for United States is 383 million. Czechia, 100. South Korea, Nicaragua, Brazil. You keep going up. Israel 25. Cuba 33.
Yeah.
And then the top 4, of course, or top 5. You have USA, DR, Venezuela, Japan, and Puerto Rico. A little surprised with that Japan number, but I feel like that's going to go up within a couple seasons with players keep coming from Japan. Yeah, and DR right there with the U.S. That really shows you how far the Dominican Republic has come to the United States, where they're right there. They're only maybe 83, 2-3 players off.
Yeah, what I wonder is what figure they use for Otani in the Japan calculation, because technically his salary this year is $2 million, but his contract as a whole pays out on average $70 million a year. And then if you calculate the actual present day value of the deal, it's like 40-something million. So he's either doing a lot of heavy lifting there, or he might be dragging them down a little bit just because of all the deferrals in his contract. Wonder how exact. I don't know the precise process that they used in order to make sense of the actual money versus deferrals in contracts. Starting tomorrow on March 6th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because 2 a day in each of the 4 pools, 8 games a day, and it'll be the same thing for I think the rest of the pool, the next 3 or 4 days are all going to be like that, where it's truly there's a little break that we have on the East Coast in the early afternoons, and then for Jeremiah on the West Coast, I think that window would be like in the late morning, where you get a little bit of break where there's not going to be any live games going on, and that's it. Otherwise, you'll get to wake up and fall asleep to high stakes baseball. To ones I likened it to the MLB postseason for the players themselves. It is, I think, once we get a couple decades from now and really revisit the WBC as it was happening in the present day, like this is going to impact players' legacies in the same way that I think actual major league playoff stuff does. And then for the fans themselves, it's on a whole other level. That's ultimately what really drives this, and what makes the crowds so crazy is that for the fans themselves, this is it's totally unique. It is totally different. The relationship they can make with their fellow countrymen during this tournament is unlike any relationship they can have with any other athletes in any other capacity. When they're representing their country and you have that in common, that's really what drives the intensity and has made this grow so much, even compared to what it was a couple tournaments ago, because of that. It's so unique.
Yeah, I was watching late last night Australian and Chinese Taipei in the Tokyo Dome, and watching it, you could have told me it was a playoff game, and I would have believed you. You hear music, you hear chants going throughout the stadium, and these are 2 countries that are thousands of miles away from Japan, and everyone there is just making noise, making chants, crowds, whatever the case may be, in terms of just how much appreciation they have for baseball, for this tournament, being able to see these top players of their respective countries play in their stadium. And that's exactly how it's going to be down here in Miami with the championship, one of the semifinals. It's going to be electric. The pool play, if you have a chance, go out and watch it. This is going to be, I think, top notch baseball. If it is every year, and you're always going to have those key moments for every tournament.
As we get to the 1 hour mark, we might as well wrap it up at this point then. Heading into the meat of this tournament and heading into the meat of spring training, almost exactly halfway from the to the end of the Grapefruit League schedule. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back again next week, probably at a similar time and place. And as always, presented by Jet Ski Rentals of South Florida. And as we are just these past couple of weeks, now part of the Foul Territory Network as well. So it is going to be in our coverage of this and the opportunity that we have to broaden our horizons and expand our audience is pretty unique. So we appreciate everybody that's stuck with us and all the new viewers that have hopped along just since this recent transition. I'm Eli Sussman, Daniel Rodriguez, Jeremiah Geiger. We had Isaac Azut earlier, Nate Karsmer as well. And a whole lot. We have another pod with Fish Unfiltered coming out tomorrow morning as well that I think people are going to enjoy. That one is with our new co-host AJ Ramos, episode number 2 of the AJ Ramos era. So for people that enjoy that as well, that's been a great wrinkle to what we do covering this team and how we're going to cover this team bigger and better this year than we have in the past. So we'll wrap it up right there. Talk to you again soon. As always, go Fish.